A family is grieving after a man was allegedly killed by the boyfriend of the mother of his children. 29-year-old Hope Jackson and 32-year-old Franklin Riddick has been arrested in the murder of Anthony Wesley Jr. Allegedly, this is all over child support disputes.
It's shocking because, these are your kids' father. And why would you want to put the kids through that?
That person you're hearing from is the current girlfriend of the victim. She says Anthony Wesley Jr. was a good man. Both Jackson and Riddick are being held without bond.
Anthony Wesley Jr. was trying to do right by his kids. Now he is dead. 2 kids are going to grow up without their father. And the woman who brought those children into the world, the same woman who once promised to love that man, she didn't pull the trigger. She didn't have to. She just opened her phone, typed 3 words, and hit send. I want him OV. Let that sink in for a second. She didn't write a novel. She didn't leave a long voicemail. 3 words. And just like that, she turned her new boyfriend into a hitman. Now, here's the question I keep coming back to. What kind of person wakes up at 3 in the morning, looks at the father of their children, and decides that a custody hearing isn't a legal battle, but a death sentence? Before we get into the parking lot and the laundry, because yes, this guy actually did laundry after the murder. To everyone leaving comments on the True Crime Unravelled channel on Facebook and over on TikTok at True Crime Unravelled TV, we see you. We read every single theory, every angry emoji, every prayer for these families. You keep this engine running, so keep them coming, because it is time to unravel and the truth is about to come out. This is the story of Anthony Wesley Jr., and it is a lot. To understand how a father ends up shot in the back at 5:45 in the morning, you have to understand who Anthony was when he was alive. This wasn't some guy on the wrong side of the law. Anthony Wesley Jr. grew up in Clinton, Louisiana. He went to East Feliciana High School. By every account from the people who actually knew him, he was the kind of guy everybody loved. Not complicated, just present. He was a father first. Now, like a lot of folks in Baton Rouge, Anthony had a past. He shared 2 children with a woman named Hope Jackson, a son and a daughter. And look, relationships end. People break up. That happens every day. The problem started when Anthony decided to do the right thing. See, Anthony didn't want to be a deadbeat. He didn't want to be a weekend dad who just sends a check. He wanted to be in those kids' lives full time. So he did what any reasonable person would do. He went to court. He filed a petition for custody, paternity, visitation, and child support. On paper, that's just paperwork. But in Hope Jackson's eyes, that was an act of war. Let's talk about Hope for a minute. She was 29 years old. She had moved on romantically. She was now in a relationship with a convicted felon named Riddick Franklin. And for whatever reason, the idea of sharing her children legally, of having a judge tell her she had to let Anthony see his own kids, drove her off the deep end. Investigators would later find out that Hope was terrified of that court date. She wasn't scared she would lose the kids entirely. She was scared she would lose control. So instead of calling a lawyer, she called her boyfriend. And she started talking. Now, here's where this story takes a turn that still makes my blood run cold. According to the arrest affidavits, the actual police documents, Hope didn't just complain about Anthony once. She increased the pressure. That is the exact phrase the cops used. She turned up the heat. She told Riddick she was tired of the child support not being processed. She told him the window of opportunity was closing. She told him if something wasn't done, she would lose everything. Pause right there. Lose everything. What exactly was she going to lose? A few $100s a month? A weekend visitation schedule? No. What she was going to lose was the satisfaction of winning. And to Hope Jackson, that was worth a man's life. Then came the text message. Investigators pulled it off Riddick's phone. Hope wrote, and I am quoting exactly, "I want him OV." For those of you who don't speak street slang, OV stands for off vapor. It means finished, deleted, dead. She didn't say handle it. She didn't say scare him. She said finish him. And she put it in writing. She might as well have signed a confession before the body even hit the pavement. But wait, it gets worse. Because the night before Anthony was murdered, Riddick Franklin later told detectives that Hope looked him dead in the eye and said this, "I ain't gon' tell on you. You ain't gon' tell on me." So we straight. Think about that. She had already planned the silence. She had already mapped out the alibi. She had already decided that the two of them would carry this secret to the grave. The murder hadn't even happened yet, and she was already negotiating the cover-up. That is not fear. That is calculation. So now let's talk about Riddick Franklin. 32 years old, convicted felon, which means the moment he touched a gun, he was already breaking the law. But what he did next goes beyond just being a felon with a firearm. On the morning of March 22nd, while the rest of Baton Rouge was still asleep, Riddick got in his vehicle. He drove to the Jefferson Lakes apartments on Jefferson Highway. And then he did something that tells you everything you need to know about his real intentions. He did not knock on Anthony's door. He did not call him outside to talk. He pulled into that parking lot at 3 a.m. and he waited. For 2 hours and 40 minutes, he sat there in the dark, just sitting, waiting for a man to wake up and walk outside. Now, ask yourself this. Who does that? Who sits in a dark parking lot for nearly 3 hours if they came to squash the beef? That was the excuse Riddick later gave the police. He said he went there to cease fire, to settle their differences like men. But here's the problem with that story. At 5:45 in the morning, surveillance video caught the whole thing. Anthony Wesley Jr. walked outside his own apartment. He never even saw it coming. Riddick shot him in the back. Anthony fell to the ground. And then, and this is the part that makes me sick, Riddick Franklin stood over him and fired several more rounds. Execution style. Let me say that again. He was already down. He was already dying. And this man stood over the father of his girlfriend's children and pulled the trigger again. That is not self-defense. That is not a fight. That is an assassination. After the shooting, did Riddick panic? Did he drive straight to the police station and confess? No. He went home. He took the gun apart piece by piece. He threw his clothes in the washing machine. He tried to scrub the evidence off the planet. But here's the thing about murder in 2026. You cannot wash away a digital trail. And you definitely cannot wash away a text message. When the East Baton Rouge Parish Sheriff's Office arrived on the scene, they found Anthony's body on the sidewalk. He was 29 years old. He never made it inside his apartment. He never got to see that courtroom. The deputies started pulling surveillance footage. They saw the white truck pull in at 3 a.m. They saw it leave at 5:40. They traced the license plate. That license plate led them straight to Riddick Franklin. Now, here is where the story gets interesting for anyone who loves justice. Because when the cops sat Riddick down in that interrogation room, he did something most killers don't do. He talked. He admitted to the shooting. But he tried to frame it as a mutual combat thing. He said he was tired of being disrespected. He said he went there to talk. But then the detectives showed him the video of him standing over a man and shooting him while he was down. And Riddick ran out of lies real fast. That is when they searched his phone. And that is when they found Hope Jackson's fingerprints all over the crime. Not literally, she wasn't at the scene. But her words were there. I want him OV. The 21-minute phone call at 3 a.m. while Riddick was sitting in the parking lot. The text at 5:30 a.m. right before the trigger was pulled. And then the 25-minute phone call immediately after the shooting. She was on the phone with him while he was washing the blood off his clothes. Let that land. She was the director. He was just the actor. So the deputies went and picked up Hope Jackson. They charged her with principal to second-degree murder. And for those of you who don't know Louisiana law, that means she is just as guilty as the man who pulled the trigger. You don't have to hold the gun to be a killer. You just have to point it. Now, I want to bring in Anthony's new girlfriend for a second. Her name is Zariana Harris. She was inside that apartment when the shooting happened. She saw the whole thing. And when the news cameras showed up, Zariana said something that broke my heart. She said, "I'm traumatized. I still see the image." But then she said something else. She said, Anthony could have talked it over. Whatever it was with the kids, it didn't have to come to this. He didn't have to lose his life. And she is right. This was a custody dispute. A child support argument. The kind of thing that family court judges deal with every single Tuesday morning. But instead of letting a judge decide, Hope Jackson decided to erase Anthony from the equation entirely. So here's my question to you, and I want you to really think about it. Why is it that the person who filed the legal paperwork, the one who tried to be a responsible father, ended up dead? And the person who tried to dodge the court system ended up in handcuffs? What does that say about how we handle co-parenting in this country? Riddick Franklin is sitting in jail right now facing second-degree murder, illegal use of a firearm, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon, and obstruction of justice. That is a laundry list that will put him away for a very long time. But Hope Jackson? She is sitting right next to him. No bond. Because the judge looked at those text messages and realized something. She wasn't an innocent girlfriend. She was the architect. Let's go back to that phrase. Principal to second-degree murder. In plain English, it means you are the reason the trigger got pulled. You set the dominoes up. You pushed the first one. And in Louisiana, that makes you a killer. Now, I want to leave you with one final thought. He filed that custody petition because he loved his son and daughter. He wanted to be there for school plays and birthday parties and Sunday dinners. And now, those kids have nobody. Their father is in a grave. Their mother is in a jail cell. And their mother's boyfriend is in another jail cell. All because 3 words got typed on a phone. I want him Ovi. If that doesn't make you want to lock your phone in a drawer, I don't know what will. Before I sign off, I want to say thank you again. To everyone who watches True Crime Unraveled on YouTube, and to the family over on Facebook and TikTok at True Crime Unraveled TV. You are the reason we dig into these files. You are the reason these victims don't get forgotten. Keep the comments coming. Keep the theories coming. We read every single one. And if this story hit you the way it hit me, do me a favor. Share it. Because Anthony Wesley's story deserves to be heard in every living room in America. Subscribe if you haven't already. And remember, justice doesn't always come fast. But the truth always comes out. Rest easy, Anthony. You did your job as a father. The system just failed to protect you.
Authorities have now charged a second person in an apparent domestic dispute where the killer shot down another man execution style. According to arrest documents, the second person charged was the victim's former lover who ordered his killing. David Hamilton reports.
This picture of victim Anthony Wesley Jr. shows his love of family.
He was a great guy. Like I said, everyone loved him. It was nothing. It's not too much bad to say because you know how you say, you pray for a certain type of man and you finally get it. That's what it was.
East Baton Rouge sheriff investigators arrested Riddick Franklin for shooting Wesley in the back on March 29th at the Jefferson Lakes Apartments. Then documents say Franklin stood over Wesley and fired several more times. For Harris, she says she'll never forget witnessing that scene.
Well, it happened in front of our apartment. So, I was shocked. I'm traumatized. I still see the image, everything.
Investigators now allege that the shooter, Franklin, was romantically involved with Hope Jackson, the mother of victim Wesley's children, who they've now charged with second-degree murder as well. Court records show Wesley and Jackson were in the middle of a custody dispute. As part of that dispute, court was scheduled for next month. According to the affidavit, now charging Jackson with second-degree murder, Jackson told Franklin multiple times she wanted Wesley killed because of a dispute involving child support. The affidavit alleges Jackson told Franklin, quote, "I want him OV." Authorities say OV is street slang for eliminating or killing someone.
It's shocking because, these are your kids' father. And why would you want to put your kids through that?
Harris mourns not only Wesley's death, but that this dispute escalated to such violence.
And Anthony could have talked it over and maybe, came to a conclusion or whatever it was that they had going on with the kids. Like, it didn't have to come to this. He didn't have to lose his life.
In addition to second-degree murder, the accused gunman, Franklin, faces charges of illegal use of a firearm, possession of a firearm, and obstruction of justice. Hope Jackson was booked in jail facing second-degree murder charges.